Last summer, we took a trip out west. We did 6,000 miles. We did it in our RV truck that we have. It was a wonderful trip. I loved it.
That was from Virginia out to Utah and back.
Yep.
And during that trip, I revealed that our camper truck, was getting about 8.5 miles to the gallon. Mm-hmm. Some of you were really appalled by that. And I don't blame you. It's an appalling thing. But out of that, several questions came up. Several people asked, well, wouldn't it have been cheaper to drive a car that gets good gas mileage and then get hotels along the way instead of paying, all of that gas? So let's talk about that.
Yep.
Hey everybody, I'm Bill.
And I'm Elizabeth. Live simple,
live free. So what we want to do here is compare the cost of driving an RV to driving a car and getting hotels, or flying, getting hotels, and renting a car at your destination.
And a lot of these figures aren't just our estimates, they're actually what it cost us to do this trip.
Right.
And some of the things that we didn't do, we're getting the best possible estimates that we can of what it would be. But we really tried to work with actual figures here as much as we could.
Now, for someone who hasn't been watching our channel, just so you know, our RV is a DIY build box truck, camper truck. We bought a U-Haul box truck, and built it out into an RV.
It's a 14-footer.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
it's a Ford F450 dually.
E450.
Excuse me. Man, it feels like a truck to me, but it really is an E.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry.
Now, for this cost comparison, we are not going to talk about the cost of buying an RV versus buying a car until the very end, and then we'll touch on that.
Yeah.
So for right now, we're just going to be talking about the actual expense of taking a trip in each one.
Yes.
So, as a general rule, if you're going to drive a long distance and stay a short time and drive a long distance back, it's cheaper to fly than it is to take an RV because of that because of the bad gas mileage. But the longer the trip, the more economical it becomes for the RV.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we want to talk about two different potential trips. The first one, because we're Thrive Life consultants, we go to Utah several times a year for Thrive Life conventions, and we usually go either from Virginia or from Florida out to Utah. So, and both of them are about the same distance, about 4,000 miles round trip. So let's talk about driving our camper truck to Salt Lake and back. 4,000 miles at 8.5 miles per gallon. That's 470 gallons, and I'm going to estimate $2.90 a gallon.
Yeah, we saw it go from like real nice lower twos to way up into the threes on our trip.
And the price of gas has dropped a little bit since our trip. So anyway, that's $1,364 for gasoline. Now, meals. Okay, we're driving out, all right? So it takes us 4 days to drive out. And then we'll be there for 4 days for the convention and then drive back again. So that's 12 days.
Of meals, yes.
Yeah.
Which we can cook in the truck.
Right. So cooking in the truck is about the same expense as cooking at home, because we go to the grocery store and we buy food and we cook it and eat it like that. And so we're estimating $50 a day for the two of us to be able to cook our own meals. For 12 days, that's $600. And then many people, when they travel in an RV, they like to get campgrounds and be able to plug in and get shore power and all that kind of stuff. If you do that, 12 nights, I'm going to estimate $45 a night at a campground. Mm-hmm. That's $540. So the total cost of driving the truck to Utah and back for us, 4,000 miles, is $2,504.
That's 8 days of driving and 4 days of being there.
Right. Now, we try not to use campgrounds. So as we're traveling and we're getting more experience of traveling and looking for places to stay for free, we're actually being able to find them better. In places like Walmart State Park or Cracker Barrel or as further, especially as you get further out west, there are a lot of city parks where you can stay for free.
Yeah.
Or while we're out there, we may very well stay in the parking lot of the Thrive Life headquarters.
Yeah.
Or a friend's driveway, maybe something like that. So if we don't pay for the campgrounds, then our trip out there and back would only be $1,964.
Yeah, that's for all the travel out there, being able to be there, and then getting back home again. Yep.
Now let's compare that to driving a car that gets 30 miles to the gallon and then renting hotels the whole way.
Yes.
So 4,000 miles in a car that gets 30 miles per gallon is only 133 gallons.
Yeah.
And at $2.90 a gallon, that's only $386, which is $1,000 less than the gas for the truck.
Yes.
And that
yes.
seems significant.
It's very significant.
But here's something to consider that a lot of people don't think about. If you're going to be staying in hotels, that means you have to eat in restaurants. Unless maybe you can find a place where you can buy a frozen dinner and cook it in the microwave in the hotel room, which is a possibility. But we're going to go with restaurants, and for us, we estimate costs about $100 a day for the two of us to eat at a restaurant.
Yeah, for the whole day. Yeah.
Yeah. If we go into a Cracker Barrel, which is one of the cheaper ones, and we eat there a lot, by the time we get some drinks, and we don't even talking about dessert, just drinks, and pay for a tip, it's anywhere from $35 to $40 for one meal.
And Cracker Barrel is really reasonably priced.
Yeah. So we're figuring $100 a day for 12 days is $1,200.
Right, and that's really inexpensive breakfast. We're not doing anything fancy.
Right.
Yep.
And then hotels, I'm going to figure an average of $120 a night. We get them sometimes as low as $80 or $90, but then sometimes $140. It depends on where you are. Generally closer to cities that are more expensive.
And you got to keep in mind that if they say the rate is like $69, it's going to be closer to $100 by the time you pay the taxes and all of the extra fees that you always have to pay.
So the motels for 12 nights at $120 a night is $1,440. Now that's an expense that we didn't have in the RV.
Yeah.
So the total cost to drive a car with hotels is $3,026, as compared to using the RV without campgrounds for $1,964.
Or even if we get campgrounds, it's $2,500.
Right.
$4.
Right. So basically, it's $1,000 cheaper to drive the RV than it is to drive the car.
Yeah.
Now another option is for us to fly, which we have always done until we had this RV.
Yeah, we've flown a lot.
So now think about, you fly and then you have to rent a car, unless you're going to a hotel where they have airport shuttle, or you can get an Uber to the hotel and then just stay in the hotel for 4 days.
Now that is if you are going to stay at the venue where whatever is going on. You know, you can get just an Uber to there.
Right.
And that's going to make that venue cost more than just finding an inexpensive.
Right, but what we generally do is get a cheaper hotel than the venue where the conference center is, and then we have to have a car to get back and forth.
Yes.
So, okay, so assuming both of us are going to go, because sometimes it's just me, but assuming both of us is going to go, round trip tickets for two to Salt Lake, it's about $1,300.
Yeah, if we can find good rates, $1,300.
And then to rent a car for 4 days is about $400. And then the hotel, once again, $120 a night is $500. And then meals for 4 days, and like we said before, $100 a day for restaurant meals. That's $400. And then now, when we did the other comparison of us driving out there for a convention, we were talking about 12 days, okay?
Yeah.
4 days of travel, 4 days there, 4 days back. And that was $100 a day for all of the meals. So we have to, in order to keep it apples to apples, we still have to talk about 12 days worth of meals here.
Yeah.
So we have 8 days of meals at home where we're not traveling.
Yeah.
At $50 a day for that. So we come out to a total for the 12 days of $3,000 for the two of us to fly.
So you understand that's 8 days of eating at home, so we can kind of mix the food in like we did with the others. But then, eating, there is going to be at cost as much for 4 days as it does for 8 days.
That's so we can
home.
figure 12 days of meals for driving versus flying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if I fly by myself, which sometimes I do, sometimes some of the leadership conferences, she doesn't go with me.
Yeah.
So then the flight is only $650. The car and the hotel are the same, $400 for the car, $500 for the hotel. The meals is only half as much for me out there. Is only I can eat for $50 a day in a hotel in restaurants by myself. So it's $200 for that, and then the 8 days that I'm not actually flying to make the total 12 days. That's $200 for that. So we end up with $1,950 for me to go out there for 4 days. So for me to fly out there for 4 days, it costs the same as for us to drive out there with the RV with both of us going.
Yeah.
About $1,900.
Yeah.
And but go ahead.
Yeah, so if it's only him flying, then flying costs about the same as if he would drive the truck out or we go out together. The difference would be a little bit of food.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not that much different.
Well, if I'm going by myself, I can drive the RV or I can fly. It's going to cost me the same.
Yeah.
But if you come with me, then it's going to be cheaper because you can just get in the truck and you don't have to buy additional tickets, plane tickets.
And so if we're not going to be going to campgrounds, then it's like $1,000 cheaper
Right.
for us to drive out there than for both of us to fly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a short trip, and it just there are the numbers. It's about the same either way if it's just for one. But if there's going to be two of you, it's going to cost more to fly. Or if you're going to take a car and hotels, it's going to cost more. Actually, driving the car and getting hotels costs the same as the two of us flying.
Yeah.
So interesting numbers. It was interesting for me to work all of this out.
Yeah, we're trying really hard to make it as accurate as we can.
So now I want to talk about our longer trip.
Yeah,
So
the big trip we took last summer.
Yeah. So what was that?
That, like I said at the very beginning of this video, we had a chance to travel out west, went to my 50th class reunion, saw family and friends we haven't seen in years, saw beautiful country. We were gone for about 6 weeks, and we traveled about 6,000 miles.
Yep. So,
it was a cool trip.
So let's take a look at the cost of driving that in an RV compared to driving that in a car and hotels. Because that was the question that people said, even with all of this travel. You drive so many miles, wouldn't it be cheaper to drive a car and get hotels?
Yeah. And of course, the flying is not really meaningful at this point. We just have to compare driving costs.
Right, driving an RV compared to a hotel. And I will say here, the longer the trip, the more economical the RV becomes compared to the car.
Yeah.
So in this trip, we did 6,000 miles at 8.5 miles per gallon. That's 705 gallons at $2.90. That's $2,044 that we spent on gas.
And I had set a bunch of money aside like a year earlier, and that's just about that's what it cost us.
Right.
For gas. Yeah.
Now, we tried to stay in free places as much as we could, and we did very well at that.
Yeah.
But there were a few campgrounds that we got. We were out for a total of 44 days, and we spent 17 nights in the campgrounds for various different reasons. We stayed in Buena Vista with our friends, Jim and Diane. We stayed in Ouray in the campground there.
We got like the last one they had in the whole town, and it was worth it to us to be able to pay for that campground.
So 17 nights. Now the ones in Ouray was expensive. That was almost $100 a night.
They were $105 a night
for an RV site.
But a bunch of the others were like $20, $25.
So 17 nights in the campground cost us $1,050, and then food for 43 days. Once again, for the two of us, $50 a day because we're buying groceries and cooking in the truck.
Yeah.
So that comes to a total cost for our trip of $5,244.
Yeah, and of course, it's not counting any incidentals. We're just looking at comparing the cost of driving, the cost of staying somewhere, and the cost of eating.
Now, if we had done that entire trip without staying in campgrounds and stayed in all free places, which, like I said earlier, we're getting better at that all the time.
Yeah.
But if we had done that, then the cost without the campgrounds would have only been $4,194.
Yeah.
So now
sometimes you just have to find a place, though. But that would have been. Yeah.
So now let's compare that to the cost of a car that gets 30 miles to the gallon.
Yeah.
Instead of 8.5. So 6,000 miles at 30 miles to the gallon is 200 gallons at $2.90 a gallon is only $580. which
Look
is
that's compared to $2,044
Yes,
for the
it's
gas for
about-
the truck.
it's about
Wow.
$1,500 less for the gas. So that sounds really good when it started out.
Yeah.
But then we're looking at a hotel, 43 nights at $120 a night, $5,160.
Yeah. And that seemed, 120 a night is not extravagant.
No.
It's very difficult to find places for under that, and it's going to be some that are more, especially if you're trying to stay in a place that's popular. Yeah.
And then the food, staying in hotels, once again, eating in restaurants, $100 a day for the two of us, 43 days, that's $4,300. So the total cost of traveling that way in a car and hotels is $10,040.
One of the things that it's hard to sometimes keep in mind is the difference it makes that we just bought groceries and cooked in the truck.
Right.
The eating out thing is considerably more expensive.
So for our 6-week trip, taking the truck is $5,846 cheaper than taking a car and getting hotels.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that's cheaper. That's the better way to go. Now, I did want to talk about the cost of acquiring the vehicles,
Okay.
because obviously an RV is going to cost you more than a car. And so let's say we're going to buy used vehicles.
Yeah, because the new stuff is so expensive. Let's say we go with good used.
So we find a good used Class C RV motorhome for $35,000, and we compare that to buying a good used car for $15,000. So there's $20,000 more we're paying for the RV.
Yeah.
Now remember, I said that driving the truck on a long trip like that is $5,800 cheaper. So that means that the break-even point of buying a more expensive RV is 3.5 trips. So now we took a trip last summer. We did not take one this winter because we have other things going on. But I want to take one twice a year. I want to do one in the summer, one in the winter. And so that's 3.5 trips. That's only a year and a half.
Yeah.
And we would break even with paying the extra cost for the RV. And then from that point on, you don't have that cost to take take into consideration. So every trip you make in the RV is going to be cheaper than flying or driving a car.
Yeah. So this is just trying to look at the as good of a cost comparison as we could come up with to
Right.
try to really be realistic about it. But there's more involved here. For anybody, I got to admit that knowing that you can go somewhere like we stayed by that beautiful little canyon in Utah, gorgeous, just a gorgeous place.
In the middle of the desert out there all by ourselves, right next to a canyon. It was just beautiful. Now this picture, you can't see deep down into the canyon, but the canyon was right behind us where you can...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just beautiful. And so just going places that would be really difficult to stay at if we were trying to get a hotel. You can visit it, but there's something about staying there. The campsites that we were able to stay in, some of them, almost all of them were wonderful, but some of them were absolutely magical, and so you can get into places that you can't really go to if you have to stay in a hotel. And then sometimes if places do have motels and hotels that are close to all these beautiful spots, now they cost a fortune.
Yeah.
They're gonna cost quite a bit because they're going to be extremely popular. So there's just the difference between you can still have a wonderful trip with the car and getting hotels and stuff, but there's just something about being able to pick where you want to kind of go to stay is cool.
Well, we did the car hotel thing. Remember when we came down here to Florida looking
Yes.
to where we wanted to buy a house?
Yes.
We did it twice, actually.
Yes.
We stayed for 2 weeks in a hotel, first in St. Pete area, and then we went up to St. Augustine.
Yeah.
And then we went home, and then it was during that trip we decided to buy a house here. So we came back down and spent another week just driving around Florida, staying in hotels, looking
just
for...
snooping everywhere to find where we wanted to buy a house, which was really cool.
So that's definitely doable, but it's just more expensive.
Yeah, and you know, when we go to Destin, we love staying down there. You know, we get a little place to stay down there because we can go to the Army Rec Center. But you know, in general, there's nothing, like I said, nothing wrong with the adventures of finding a motel or hotel to stay in. But you know, with the RV, we could go into places that were, you know, you could stay for a couple days and just experience it. You also can. You don't have the pressure of trying to make sure you have a reservation for a hotel, and you have to go that far. If you want to go a shorter distance, you can probably go a shorter distance, and it won't be a problem. So
Well, yeah, I want to get back to that in just a second, but tell them about your balance issues that you can't drive long distances.
well, what I was going to say is the things we've talked about before now, you know, could apply to anybody. Another thing I want to mention real quickly is that there is such a difference between stopping and you go into your RV, whatever it is, and you know where everything's at, and you got your stuff all put away, and you know
you're at home.
You're at home. You know how clean it is. You know all that. And sometimes going from motel to motel to motel or hotel, you're packing stuff in every single time. You don't know what the conditions are really going to be like. So I loved knowing my own little environment. So
Zeb says, people always want to compare hopping from hotel to RVing. Hotels have bugs, cameras, time limits, and no food or expensive food. Even if it costs more, I'd rather be in my own bed and bedding with my own time schedule and my own food. And Seamology says, after working in hotels, I'd rather throw a mattress in the back of a van than stay in one. So even if the costs were comparable or even slightly more expensive, I'd choose your method. Finding hotels, the chaos that can happen at check-in, walking through long hallways and not being able to see your vehicle at night, how noisy the hallway and neighboring rooms can be, and don't even get me started with what's going on in hotel rooms, plus dragging suitcases, packaging and unpackaging, etc.
now, in terms of us, however, we've got other factors that have been really significant. When we were talking about this trip, when we would go out just for the short trip, that would be 4 8-hour days driving. That is extremely difficult on me. Because of the brain damage from the stroke, I have definite balance problems. It's not my inner ear, it's that part of my brain. And because we spend all day, whenever we're up doing stuff, with our big old heavy head balancing on our neck, these little micro adjustments all day long, people don't even notice it. But my brain gets tired from constantly trying to handle the balancing when half of my brain's capacity to do it is not there anymore. I have to compensate. And so, you know, from the right side, right inner ear issue doesn't get, the signals don't, there's no, my brain tissue and that left side is destroyed. And so being in anything that vibrates just exacerbates that whole situation. I start getting numb-faced, I start getting completely worn out. And so long days are rough on me traveling. I don't care if we're on a boat or on a, I don't do boats very well at all anymore, but I can't do the motorcycle very fast at all anymore because it's too much vibration. So anyway, 8-hour days, 4 days in a row in a car, I don't think I could do it. It would accumulate. By the third or fourth day, I would be an absolute numb wreck.
That's driving, sitting up
in a car. Yeah. It gets to be way too much. The days just get harder to recover from. So in the truck, we're set up in the back where I've got a nicely cushioned place to lay down with seat belts. And we've made it as safe as we can. And if I need to rest my brain, I can get on my side on a pillow and I no longer have to balance. And so long days are still hard on me, but it's much more possible if I can go back there. And it's made traveling feasible. I could do that big trip last summer because I could rest when I needed to. And Bill's a ridiculously early riser. We've talked about that before. And sometimes he would just get up, make sure I'm all fastened in properly, and just start driving at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. If you've been watching this, our channel for a while, you've heard this before, but we're telling you all this for those of you who may be new to the channel. But yeah, I will get up at 4:30 and make some coffee, and I'll start driving at 5 o'clock in the morning, and she's still sleeping in the back. And I can get 3 or 4 hours of driving out of the way before she even gets up.
Yeah.
And so that's the only thing that would really make 8-hour days possible.
Because then I'm not having to sit up quite
If
so
we don't
long.
do that, then she's only capable of 5, maybe 6 hours a day. So,
And that's not day after day after day.
right.
Oh.
So anyway, driving cross country like that is much, much easier and better for us in the RV than it is in a car where she has no choice but to just sit up. Now she can lean the seat back and try to sleep, but that's not the same as laying out flat.
Well, I just need to get, if I had a recliner in the front seat of the car, I mean a real recliner, but I have to be somewhere where my brain does not have to balance anymore. Flights are very difficult for me because of the vibration on the plane.
Right.
So it's why I have to have my walker in airports, because if my brain gets really tired, I lose my balance. I have to have somewhere to sit down. So
And we fly all the time, but fortunately, usually no more than maybe a 3-hour flight. Or she'll have a long layover. We always try to get the longest layovers we can so she has time to recuperate.
yeah, I can kind of recover. We've sometimes across country will be a 5.5-hour flight, but I couldn't do that day after day. That's for sure. It's just too much vibration. Anyway, so that is another factor as to why we choose to do things the way we do. But we also wanted to give you some figures for just normal, not weird balancing people. So
Now, if you're going to take a big long trip and buy an RV to do it, and that's going to be your only trip, you're probably better off just staying in hotels. But if you're going to, like us, keep it for a while and do multiple trips, eventually, like I said, it'll pay for itself and it'll be cheaper in the long run. And here's another cool thing. Now that you've got the RV, when you're not on big trips, you can take weekend trips wherever you want.
oh yeah,
You can take a 4-day, weekend and just go to a state park or whatever you want to do. And
have some fun with it.
yeah,
Get together with friends. We go back and forth between Virginia and Florida at least twice a year. And I have to break that 10-hour trip down into 2 days.
Right.
And I love knowing that we can stop at Cracker Barrel and spend the night in the RV, and it doesn't cost us the cost of the hotel.
Right.
It works out really well, and it's much more comfortable. Yeah. So, yeah, there's, it depends on what a person wants to do, but we just wanted to explain why we've made the decisions that we've made and how the cost comparison turned out.
well, I don't know if it's so much explaining why we made our decisions as it is explaining, just answering questions. Which is cheaper?
Yeah.
What's better to do, an RV or a car? Well, if you're going to do a lot of RVing, then definitely buy an RV. If you're only doing one trip, especially if it's a shorter trip, then a car is going to be cheaper.
Right. Yeah, it isn't so much of wanting to, your situation isn't the same as ours, but we wanted to give as good of a cost comparison as we could as to what might be a better deal in the long run and how they compare. Sure.
So I know that was an awful lot of numbers. I hope you were able to follow through some of that. But there you go. There's the information. So thanks for watching.
Yep. Live simple.
Live free. You be blessed.
Yes. We love you guys. And we are going to be sharing another trip with you very soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.